Hey, everybody, welcome to the Enhance Your World show. I am your co host, Chris Alba, and with me is Larkin.
Hello, welcome. Welcome, welcome.
um, Welcome. And today's show, we're going to talk about signs, messages, and synchronicities and how to use these um, as guideposts so we are observing. Um, our directionality and using our own intuition to guide us through life versus using other people's um, advice or opinions or things that sometimes seem to lead us down a path that we didn't want to follow. Um, so I'm excited about this. Larkin, what would you like to share about it?
Well, I'm excited about it too, Chris. I think this is, a very broad spectrum topic in that, you know, um, I've been a lifelong reader, plus my 15 years of coaching. I find that signs, messages, and synchronicities are very um, powerful, important, and very common topics that come up in both of those areas.
Mm-hmm.
And anything that has to do with life transformation, manifesting, healing, all these things. Um, for those of you who joined us on Sunday for the prayer sphere, you will probably recognize some things that we talk about here. This is actually a beautiful, sequel, actually takeaway leading right from that prayer sphere conversation into this, because I want to set the stage by reminding everyone, and this will help you guys too to distinguish between your intuition and your intellect. The mind is always in the past and the future. The mind cannot be present. You, however, not only can be present, but you are presence itself. You are the now itself. And so when we're talking about signs, messages, and synchronicities, what we're truly wanting is we're truly coming from an egoic veil perspective in our head, where we want to understand the past and we want to know what's coming in the future, because we often rely on that knowing in order to determine the choices that we make. And ironically, as a psychic medium, I don't really actually believe in that. Even though I give people predictions, I also see that it pulls people, there's a place for that, because if you are in past or future, you're not present. And the most powerful place you can be is present. Where do signs, messages, and synchronicities fall into this part of the conversation? Well, I would say that the signs, messages, and synchronicities are the things that our egoic mind, who's always in the future or the past, is wanting and needing in order to interpret what is beyond time and space, what is beyond the egoic veil. There is a way to do that. It can be very powerful, and Chris and I are going to try to talk you through some of that today, but it's very mixed up. I find that people confuse it. Teachers confuse it, readers confuse it, coaches confuse it.
Shoot, I've confused it. So, I mean, we're all in that boat, and that's,
Yeah,
I
well,
think,
go ahead.
I think that's part of, what makes this show so powerful is because we're not coming from a place of, we're an absolute expert and authority on any of these things. We're just sharing our insights, the things that we've learned through other people's teachings as well as our own experiences, and opening the conversation up for interpretation, because as Eckhart Tolle would say, I can't tell you the truth, but you can recognize the truth in what I'm saying as it relates to where you're at. And so we're not here to poo-poo on anyone's path or any one methodology, or saying this one's better than the other or whatever. It's finding that relation within yourself, so you feel guided and a sense of momentum that naturally arises from within, rather than trying to validate the way we're thinking, feeling, believing, behaving through external circumstances.
Very true. And so I want to finish this explanation because it's a conceptual thing that obviously I'm not doing a good job of it. Because even you didn't catch on to what I was trying to explain.
Yeah, I missed it.
So you're correct, but obviously I'm missing the boat here. So let me try to explain this a different way. And it might just be that it's new and unfamiliar to everyone. Hi, Mark Thomas, welcome. This is, when we're trying to get our cognitive mind conceptually around something that is unfamiliar to us in this life, we often miss it. So I'm going to try to explain this again, but it's really, really, really important, and it can be life-changing. Signs, messages, and synchronicities. As I was just talking about, the mind can only be in the past and the future. Your eternal consciousness is presence itself. That is where the signs, symbols, and messages that you're seeking come from, right? So our egoic mind, our cognitive mind, looks for signs, messages, and synchronicities in order to interpret and understand what is outside of time and space, what is in the now, what is in the present. Okay. And what happens is people of all walks go looking for signs, symbols, and messages. But when they get them, or they make them up, or they misunderstand them, or they misinterpret them, remember, nothing has meaning until you give it meaning. Nothing has meaning until you give it meaning, which takes us into the realm of what you believe must become your reality. And the external world will shape and morph in order to validate and verify what you believe here. So it's really important that when we're looking for signs, messages, and synchronicities, that we're aware. Thank you. I'm glad you get this. It's very hard to explain, to put this into words, because I understand it conceptually so well. But to share it with others in a way that you guys can apply it is difficult, because as Chris was saying before, it's something you have to experience. And we're trying to help you do that. It takes me years to get my clients to be able to experience this. My point is let me use a reading, for example, because I do a lot of those too. And this pops up a lot in readings, right? Not so much in coaching. It does pop up, but in readings, people are always wanting to know, what does this sign mean? What's the message? Well, normally they don't receive the full or true message because they're in the future and the past. It would be like going to Japan, if you're from the USA, not speaking any English or not speaking any Japanese, asking them a philosophical question or trying to understand a joke, and they're speaking in a totally different language. So what the signs, messages, and synchronicities are is their interpretations for us from non-physical, outside of time and space, into the physical world. Okay? Here is the rub, and this is where people get lost. When they come for a reading, or they talk to a coach, or they're trying to figure it out, they want an ultimate answer. They want what they call the truth. But the truth is, just like quantum physics can have two totally different realities. It can have same reality happening in opposite sides of the world, or two different realities happening in the same space. Just like that, the sign and symbol will be morphed according to your beliefs already and your perception. So this is why people miss signs and symbols. So how do we get to the truth of the sign and symbol? You can only understand what is at your level of consciousness, which takes us full circle to Here's your answer. And I guarantee you nobody is going to do this because it takes practice. And this is a new concept we should be taught in school, and we're not. Make your level of consciousness your number one priority, because the more in alignment and the higher the vibrational frequency of your conscious state at the time will completely determine how you interpret the signs, messages, and synchronicities.
Mm-hmm.
Take it for what you will. Chris?
Yeah. That
You're
was,
up.
I'm on. Well, I mean, geez, how do you follow that? That's the show.
Well, what happens is that's consciousness coming through, which is why I have to spit it out. If I had to say it as a human being alone, I wouldn't be able to do it.
Right.
And that is the connection. Thank you, All's Twins. That is the connection, guys, that Chris was talking about. We want you to have for yourself, because then you can say something like that, like Mark going, absolutely, like he's getting it, right? This is something that we can share with people who have that same experience or awareness without hardly saying a word.
Right.
It's one of those things where maybe a month or a year or a decade down the road, one of you is going to be listening to this, or you've taken notes and you're going to be like, oh my God, I get what she was saying now.
Right.
One of those things. It's happened to me a zillion times.
Right. Yep. And I mean, and it is like, it's interesting as you're going through the process, right? And you're feeling good about the changes you're making in your life, how you're showing up, how everything's flowing. There's good momentum. You're feeling happy, and all those things. And then you see, master numbers, or you see this, or you see that, and you just kind of smile, like, oh, thanks. Thanks for the confirmation that everything is, on track and in alignment, or you can see certain things, and maybe I should be being more mindful because I've been on autopilot for a while, and I need to do some conscious practices to make sure that things aren't creeping back in from my subconscious that at one time I was aware of, but I've let go of that discipline to make sure it doesn't resprout, like, if I don't know why I'm all of a sudden wanting to use garden analogies, but when you have a weed, and you pull the weed and you don't maybe get all the roots out, you have to come back and make sure that it doesn't come back, but then sometimes we, lay some cardboard or some kind of barrier down, some cardboard, and all that, and it suffocates it off, so it can't be resprung. And I think that's the challenge with a lot of our practices, and especially the egoic mind, because I hear this a lot in my practice as well, and I'm sure you do too, Larkin, is, well, I've done that. I've cut the cords. I've done this. I've done that, and I'm still. It keeps coming back, and it's like, well, yeah, it's just residual energy. You have to go into the resistance of it. The more we can go into the resistance of it, the more that it just naturally just kind of dissipates for itself. And I think that is a raising of your consciousness or your awareness, and being creative and saying, okay, here's a challenge. How do we overcome it? As an individual, I have my own work to do. Collectively, we have our collective work to do. And how can we do that in an efficient and effective way? And that's the goal, I think, of any relationship or business or organization or anything in that mindset, is how do we put everything out on the table so then we can be aware the opportunities as well as the possible challenges. And we do that in a cognitive way, but we have to be in a vibration as we're going through those challenges so we don't lose ourselves in our emotions and revert back to some subconscious program that at one time kept us safe. And we keep seeing these patterns, right? Like words and our behaviors and all these things, they're also signs, messages, and synchronicities. When we hear this a lot. Oh, when things are going good, I start to worry because I'm waiting for the other shoe to drop, and then it finally does, and you're like, aha, I knew it. Happened. I knew things were going too good.
Yeah.
And that's just reconfirming all the stuff of our past. But at the same time, we're like in our, what we would think is our present awareness going, no, I just want to be here. I just want to be here. I just want to be here. But at the same time, we're kind of procrastinating, or maybe we're, in other terms, being lazy or whatever. Not in a intentional way, but just I think we've gotten so conditioned within our lives. There's this base level of comfort. Like when we talk to people from other regions of the world that, are hunter-gatherer type, what we would deem in America probably third world, type situations, they have a harder work ethic because that's what they had. That's what they've grown up with. That's what they've been conditioned to do. Where at least for a lot of us, we were conditioned to go to certain schools, gain this level of intelligence or knowledge, and try to live a good life, whatever that means. And until we question those things, we can't find our own truth. So many of the people that I've walked with, they have degrees, and they said, well, if I would have known what I know now, I wouldn't have gone to school for this, but I felt forced that I had to make a decision, and so I made a decision. And finding these things, these challenges in our lives that makes us feel like we're not living up to our truest self or our truest potential is a sign that we're out of alignment with our higher purpose, and maybe we're feeding more of our egoic identity and character, the things that we've been conditioned to think have meaning or think are important, and using these signs and messages from as possible guides gives us an opportunity to interpret things a little bit different. So then we can make different choices. We can make different things because it, as you were saying, it brings up new awarenesses in the now, and we're not always coming from a place of past or future. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. What if in each moment we went through each day, instead of trying to figure all this out, I'm just going to toss you guys way out of the box here for a little bit. What if instead of going through your day analyzing everything, and yes, it is all about choices, powerful choices, but it's also a choice how we respond and react to everything, our thoughts, what's influencing us, the meanings that we give things. We don't realize it, but really everything other than what's attached to our autonomic nervous system, our heart rate, our breathing, our digestive system, all that stuff is a choice. So what if just for one day you were to choose not to analyze anything that's happened, that you were to choose to recognize that every thought had an association with your past and your future.
Mm-hmm.
And in between, this is why Eckhart Tolle says, in between those thoughts is the truth.
Mm-hmm.
In between those thoughts is the now.
Mm-hmm.
In between those thoughts is the observer behind your thoughts, which is the real you. See, most people that have come to me for coaching, they want to find themselves. They want to know their life purpose. They want to know their greater purpose. They feel like they're on or off their path. There is none of that. All of that is made up. You can't be off your path. You can be out of alignment as a human, but you
Right.
can never be off your path because your life is your path.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bigger picture. That is your soul's path. You're here to learn. You can't mess it up. It's just a small stop on the way. What if, making mistakes was a part of the plan so you could learn and grow?
Mm-hmm.
When we, like you were saying, Chris, when we react to all these different things, which is one of the reasons the Stoics lived the way that they did.
Mm-hmm.
When we react, we just waste time and we waste energy. Now, mind you, nothing's ever really wasted. But as far as a life goes,
Mm-hmm.
you can get to the same result with zero reaction, with just about no work. If you're having a relationship issue or an argument with someone, there's obviously infinite ways you can go. Let's say there's two major ways you can go. One, you can sit down and talk to them. You can hash it out. You can try to have a mental and emotional understanding. You can try to prove your point. You can try to apologize. You see, the more I'm getting into the mental aspects of this, the more complicated it gets, the more tangled in the web you become. There's never really a solution. Usually at the end, if there's a solution, somebody's kind of, there's something underlying. Maybe not. But this can go on and on and on and on and on and on and on, whether it's an hour or whether it's a year or whether it's 30 years. You can get the same solution and the same results. Now, most of you are going to disagree with this because this is something that's very difficult to explain. So you're probably going to place a different meaning on it. But just hear me out here. When we are non-reactive and we get present with the situation, even if we were to smile and do nothing. Hi, Donna Ray, welcome. We would still get the outcome worked out and resolved, but with less time and less effort. I'm not saying if you have a mischarge on your credit card, don't go take care of that. But when there's extraneous thought and drama, when you're using your thought beyond what you need it for as a tool, let's say you're job hunting and you're afraid to make a mistake. So you go 5 years because you haven't found the perfect job, because you don't want to have to switch jobs a few times. And so for 5 years, you go doing random work because you don't want to take a chance on any of these jobs. What about if instead of overanalyzing it, you just tried something out, right? My point is that the signs, messages, and symbols that can come in two directions. They come and you perceive them according to what you already believe. So that will change as your level of consciousness changes. And the other thing is what you need it to be for at that time. So that's why oftentimes we think we had a sign, message, or a synchronicity. Synchronicities are a little different with that. Those you can kind of already go, oh, aha, because it's already happened.
Right.
But when we have these things, we can say, oh my gosh, like my car broke down on the way from the interview. I see people read this stuff into this all the time. I've had this with clients where we've had to reschedule 3 times and they're like, I don't know, we've had to reschedule. I think it's a sign. And I think to myself, yeah, it's a sign. I don't want to work with you. I mean, what are you going to do? You know, if you're crossing the river, you're a cave person crossing the river, and the whole tribe crosses, and you're afraid to cross because you don't want to get washed away, so you get left alone and eaten by the other tribe that's on the other side of the river. Well, okay, so let's say you say, oh my God, like, you know, it's a sign that everybody crossed and I didn't. Something good's waiting for me on this side, and then you get eaten. Or everybody could go to the other side and find that there's a predator waiting on the other side, and then you're like, oh, see? So we just have to be careful before we go out trying to read signs and messages. We need to be careful that we are, as Chris was talking about, you know, in tune with yourself. And when you guys always hear me talk about remember who you are, you don't have to seek that. You don't have to look for that. You don't have to search for that. You don't have to go through all this hard work and spend thousands of dollars to remember who you are. You have to do the opposite. You have to simply learn to be present. The boring thing that nobody wants to do. People would rather go spend money on a $30,000 program where people tell them what they want to hear than sit with me in a less expensive program and have me help them practice being present, because it's more work and it's not fun to the ego.
Right.
So, you know, which person are you? Which one are you?
Yep. I had that confirmed last night by my client. He's like, you keep telling me all these same things over and over and over again, but now I'm starting to understand. I'm like, yeah, I can't tell you how to live your life, and you live an authentic version of your life. Like, you know, I'm here to encourage and support you in the decisions that you choose to make. That's right for you, hold safe space. But that's all I can really do if I'm going to be of service to you beyond just this transaction of client practitioner.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
we're each on our own path. That's the thing. We have to do the work ourselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Yep. And maybe we can create some new awarenesses for the individual to ponder on, you know, but at the same time, it has to be cultivated from within. And so it's still mindset. It's still mindset stuff. It's still at the level of mind when you're having a conversation.
So, and then if it's a cognitive conversation, if it's a thinking conversation versus a conscious conversation.
Right.
I think it might be fun for everyone, Chris, if we sort of broke it down and talked a little bit about signs, messages, synchronicities separately.
Okay.
Would you like to do that? You want to get us started on that?
So yeah, I mean, I can take signs, right? I mean, you already mentioned the one, you know, I mean, people do this all the time, you know, oh, I was stuck in traffic, so I wasn't meant to be, you know, whatever. I mean, and to me, when we're using signs, the question that I ask myself is this allowing me to hold myself accountable and responsible for myself, or is this excusing my behaviors and giving me an alibi? So, you know, and giving me an out of why I didn't meet either someone's communicated expectation or my own expectation. And you know, and the signs can be, you know, from nature. Like I said, when I see hawks, they have a, you know, it's a message. If I see, you know, different birds on a regular basis, like I interpret that from a belief that those animals are trying to communicate to me at some level. And then I have to tune into myself to get the message. You know, the bird isn't going to communicate to me in English and tell me, watch out for this thing. or you need to move this way. But it's just a reminder to get present. That's how I use signs. I'm noticing this pattern. Okay, pay attention. That's a sign for me. That's how I tend to interpret them, and how I use them to navigate for me. Um, is there anything else that you would like to add to that, or?
Yeah, I think that signs are things that are unique to each of us, as Chris was mentioning, and they can come in a physical form or an interaction with someone or words or something we see that we think about and it triggers a particular thought, or it can be what you guys need to look for with signs is what are the patterns and repetition with them. Okay, and remember, everything's a reflection of your inner self and your inner state of being and your state of mind. But ask yourself, is there a pattern there? Okay. So Donna Ray, if you look at the title, it says signs, messages, and synchronicities. That's what we're talking about today. Okay. So when we look for signs, look for, and guys, I recommend, if you're not on these in the beginning, go back and listen from the beginning. I would always bring a notebook and a pen if you guys are serious. Some people aren't, they just want to listen, but that can be helpful too. But so look for the repetition with signs. Is the number 4 important to you? And when you see things 4 times, that's validation. Or when you see a sign that means something to you, do you then ask for validation and get another validation, right? Signs are often things that stand out. They're extraordinary, or they're out of the ordinary, or they're unique. Okay. Oftentimes they catch us off guard. If you're looking for signs, you're probably not going to see them. Okay. And so, they can be signs from our higher selves, signs from our angels and spirit guides, just signs from life saying, hey, like, don't go this way, go that way. And to be truthful, guys, you miss almost all the signs. We humans, there are signs everywhere for us all the time. And we usually miss them because we're in our head. Okay. So definitely look for the repetition, look for the growth and evolution of the signs, find which signs are most common for you. For Chris and I, the most powerful ones that we appreciate are nature. For me, they come in all forms, but really the most powerful magical signs for me come to me through nature. Okay. I think the difference really with the signs and the messages are, messages obviously are a little, signs can be validating, or they can say, hey, you're going the wrong direction, stop, or warning, don't do that. You might even get a feeling in your gut, like, that's a sign, right? That's your intuition screaming at you. But messages are a little more intricate. Okay. Messages are something that, might be like what I get a lot of for people in readings. Okay. But that's not always it. Sometimes you might be, with Chris, with some of his, shamanic work and work with some of the teachers that he holds seminars with, people can walk out of those events with messages. And they're usually messages that are either validating or they're aha moments, right? They're either validating or they may reveal an opposite of what you think or what you believe. Okay. Sometimes it's a very clear message. Sometimes, you go try a day at a new job and, 3 people are nasty as shit to you. And you're like, you know what? That's a very clear message. I would say that's more than a sign. That's a lot of times they'll say the same words to you. You might run into people in a week that might say the same thing to you. And that's a message. Oh, maybe check this out. Like often I'll have people suggest something to me about my animals or my horses. By the time I get to the 3rd one, I'm like, okay, my intuition was already thinking that I need to check it out. Okay. Right. So those are the signs versus the messages. The synchronicities. Oh, Chris, did you have something you wanted to say about messages?
Well, I mean, and you hit on it there when someone's name comes up multiple times, or certain emotions or feelings rather come up. Yep. Or those are also messages to be looked at, to be observed, and to be worked with, you know.
Yeah.
So it's
Donna,
not just external stuff, but
you didn't distract me, Donna. I'm like a terrier on somebody's pant leg when it comes to yeah, get distracted. So yeah, I mean, I think so. That's important though for you guys to really distinguish, because I think people lump all these things together.
Mm-hmm.
The synchronicities are super cool, and we usually recognize them as or after they're happening, right? Whereas the signs and messages are often kind of guiding us ways. I see synchronicities as oftentimes, you know, validation, or, you know, a reminder that it's not just me, that there's a higher power at play, that there's a bigger picture at play. You know, synchronicities you just absolutely could not, you couldn't make up.
Right.
You know, you couldn't make up. Can you think of examples?
Oh, I mean, tons. I mean, being, you know, I can think throughout my professional career, when I knew I was in alignment, I would just show up places, and all of a sudden I would meet the people that I needed to meet to get to move to the next, you know, level, or to the next thing, or to be included in an event, or, you know, meet a new talent, or, you know, I mean, same thing with the spiritual thing, you know, or the spiritual walk, right? You go to a certain ceremony and you meet somebody, and then all of a sudden, like, it snowballs all this stuff. I mean, that's, to me, synchronicities, as well as master numbers, or, you know, seeing things that remind you of certain things, you know, so you can keep it in your awareness, you know, because you're processing it and you're working through it. So that's how I see those.
Hi, Tammy. That's wonderful. I love cardinals. They're great spiritual messengers. I want to remind you guys, and then I have an example of this too, but I want to remind you that this is really hard for people to swallow, because we live in a collective egoic world. But our individual soul paths are so unique. Whatever you believe is true. We each are living in our own entirely unique universe, as well as a collective one.
Mm-hmm.
You have an entire universe within you. So, you know, this is why you have children who grow up and they have completely different perspectives of childhood. Neither one of them was wrong. That's what they experience. And this is hard for people to swallow. I said this a few weeks ago. You can tell if you know what to look for in the 95% of your mind that you're unaware of, which, after coaching for 15 years, this is easy for me. I can tell what people's beliefs are just by looking at their life. You can do this for yourself. You can look at the state of your life and the things in your life that you're wanting to change, or that you like, or whatever. And that will tell you exactly what your subconscious belief system is. So even if your conscious mind says to you, wow, I'm confident, I like myself, I believe in myself, I'm a risk taker. If your subconscious mind is programmed that's not you, and you can't really trust yourself, then your life is actually going to be demonstrating and revealing to you the opposite of what your conscious mind is telling me. Okay, so it's very important to understand that you are already an enlightened being. You are already a conscious soul, but you are here in this world for an unconscious experience to wake back up conscious while you're here. Most people won't do that while they're here, and that's okay. But understand that whatever you believe becomes your reality. This doesn't mean, oh, I believe I'm Superman, now I can go to the top of the Empire State Building and I can just jump off and I'll survive. But it does mean that as you start to become aware of what you believe, you'll see your life shift. And the signs, messages, and synchronicities, you guys can keep an eye on those, and you can see how they transform and evolve and you can sort of see how you're evolving. And I want to say this. We are taught that we have to find who we are. We have to seek who we are. We got to figure things out. We got to go through this process. We've got to heal. We've got to discover who we are and what we really want. And I'm sorry to everyone, but all of it's bullshit. That is true if you're living only in the world of the ego.
Mm-hmm.
So you have two choices. You can pursue understanding. Well, I don't want to say understanding because that's a cognitive thing. Remembering who you are and what it means to be conscious. That means to identify again with the observer behind your thoughts. And all that goes away. It all goes away. All the problems, they are no longer what they were to you. They're just something you observe. Most people aren't going to take that route. Or you can continue working hard and struggling to fight through these things, to escape the uncomfortable feelings, to escape the fear, to work hard to make yourself better, to try to fix things, to realize what's wrong with you, to learn how to manifest, to go through a lifelong effort for healing just so you can get to where you want to be. I'm just throwing this out there. I don't expect you guys to take number one. I want to share this because I want you guys to understand you have choices you are not aware of. And with all the buzz and hum in the world from teachers and coaches and therapists and you name it, if you want to get away from the brainwashing, you have to go conscious. You can use signs, messages, and symbols to help guide you there. But until you learn to trust yourself, listen to your own intuition so that you can filter the advice and everything that everyone else is giving you through that and not misunderstand it for your ego, not misinterpret it for your egoic mind that will lead you astray. You're going to be in that cycle. Okay. And so one of our reasons for sharing the signs, messages, and synchronicities today is that you can use them in a way, like Chris mentioned in the beginning, that you're dependent on them and you rely on them and you're desperate for them. That's you being out of your power and giving your power away. Or you can step into your power, trust that everything's working out for you, and use those signs, symbols, and synchronicities to ask, what do I need to learn here? What is this trying to show me? What are the habits, patterns, and repetitions showing up here that are pointing to the habits and repetitions in my life and in myself? And I would write that down because that's a powerful way to use signs, messages, and synchronicities.
Mm-hmm.
Tammy says, I'm new on this spiritual awakening and many friends and family think I'm going crazy. Okay, well, first of all, you're not new on it.
Congratulations. Woo!
Everyone's on it.
Yeah.
The only difference is your egoic mind has decided, oh, now I'm interested in spiritual awakening. And all these things mean that that's what I'm doing now. And I'm involved in all these things that I think are going to help me spiritually awaken.
Mm-hmm.
Not to put it down. I love what you're doing, Tammy. And you are on your own journey of conscious awakening. But I want to remind you all that you all are. See, we can say all this and we can agree with each other, and Chris and I can agree and we can say all this stuff, but from spirit's perspective, from consciousness perspective, from your higher self, Tammy, and yes, I do use that term because it's our conscious self that should be using our mind as a tool. You're not doing any of that. You already are. You're awake. You fell asleep when you were born. You're going through a process of learning, and hopefully you will, wake up while you're here in human form. Not a big deal. To us, it's a huge deal to human beings. And I always find it funny because people come to me all the time. They're like, when I started my spiritual path, No. It's your conscious path. I know people that say they're on a spiritual path and there's nothing spiritual about them. But one thing is true, we're all on a path of conscious awakening, whether we like it or not, whether we choose to or not, whether we're atheist or agnostic or Catholic or Muslim or a tree hugger, doesn't matter. We all are, because you're already an enlightened being. And so that's why when we remember who we are, it all comes flooding back. And then that's all you have to do. Right? So anyway, so that's fine. But please understand that if you think friends and family think they're crazy, first of all, I would probably keep it private. Because then you keep that power to yourself. You can feel free to share if you want, but you give that power away of your journey each time, because they're not going to understand. Okay? The other thing is that one of the reasons you think they think you're crazy is because it makes them uncomfortable. Just like if you put me in some strange religious church or, group or cult, I'd feel very uncomfortable. Okay? And part of that is because as you're stepping out of the norms, Tammy, whenever someone steps out of the social circle, the group that they're in, it makes everyone inside the group uncomfortable, because the underlying message is, well, if they're doing it, then you can do it too, and why aren't you? Mm-hmm. And so the first thing they'll try to do is put you down and suck you back in, because it frightens them when anyone steps out of the norm. One or two of them might eventually decide to follow in that. Eventually, you normally end up letting those people in your life fall away or separate from you a little bit, because you have to choose to, as you're growing, you're no longer a match for them. Okay? You need to be more careful with your wording. Hold on, Greg, we'll get to you. Nailed it. Good. You could be more careful with your wording. Yes. I'm not quite exactly sure of your circumstances, or you don't even have to share. You can wait and let them notice as you feel more free and you're at peace and you're handling things without reacting. You're going to find that people say, well, like people say to me all the time, well, doesn't that bother you? And I'm like, why would it bother me? And they're like, I wish I could be that free. I wish I could, And so then that helps them, because you've then held a space, and people are much more interested when they're curious and they see you benefiting from something and they want to know what that is, than when you're sharing something they don't understand, right? So when people ask and inquire, they're always going to benefit more and probably give you a kinder, better, more valuable interaction than when you're telling. Sorry, I want to get to Greg, but Chris, I've been talking, so go ahead.
Oh, yeah. The one thing that I would like to say to Tammy is you can't say the right thing to the wrong person or the wrong thing to the right person. And the only thing that differentiates it's timing. And as Larkin said, as we're moving through this process of conscious awakening, where we're coming more into our homeostasis of our true self, which is beyond identification, because I can say I am peaceful, I am loving, I am this, I am that. At the same time, I can be just the opposite of that, whether I'm aware of it or not. So I could think that I'm doing the most loving action based on my my current state of conscious awareness. And later I can find out what I did actually harm someone that I wasn't aware of in the moment, or had an effect, and I think that's the conscious awakening movement, if you will. If it's a movement, it goes beyond commercialization. It goes beyond the label on the food. It goes beyond greenwashing things. It goes beyond all these various different huge topics that affect the whole planet. But at the same time, our humanity and society is foundationally built on these structures. So when we consciously awaken, we find how to participate in these certain systems that vibrate within our heart and head space in a more harmonious way, such as, reducing consumerism to reduce the amount of waste that is out on the planet. Those types of big BHAG type goals of how do we eliminate pollution from our environment. There's so many different ways, but you have to find what works for you, and the same for everybody else. And so when we find a way and we get really passionate about it and we want to share it because we're so excited because it's making us feel so awesome, that level of excitement and enthusiasm a lot of people aren't used to. I could remember in my early beginnings in direct sales, I'd get so excited about the products or the opportunity or something, and I'd go to all my friends and family, and then I couldn't get any of them to actually show up and get the answers so they could make an informed decision, because I didn't have that information at the time to share that to them in a good way in the very beginning. But later on, like in my energy healing, it took 5+ years before my mom would even get a session with me, even though I was having success for myself and other people. She wasn't ready. And once she was ready, then it was an easy transition. And so that's what we're looking for, is finding that permission of when to sit with somebody, because that's at the level of where they're at, or when it's time for us to move on with our journey. And if they choose to move with us, great. If they choose not to, well, then that was what was meant to be. Beyond our personal wants or desires, in many of the facets.
I want to get to Greg's comment, but
Sure.
that made me think of something too, Chris. As you're talking, it is very challenging. The longer that I coach and I do readings, the more determined I am to get down to the core of things without all of the marketed crap.
Right.
Because in my opinion, and I've been in this journey a long time, guys, like a long time before I started coaching, I was studying with all these people and learning all this stuff. And what I found is there are these threads of truth out there, but social media and marketing is so flooded with people trying to make money off of these things they don't even know anything about. And you could easily say, well, Larkin, who the hell are you? You don't have a #1 selling book. You don't have this and that out. Okay, well, fine. My point is that, there are people like Dr. Wayne Dyer, Eckhart Tolle, that are very authentic about this, and we're really trying to teach this and really, earn their money, and were able to make a living doing this, not even because that's what they were trying to do. But it is very, very, very important that you do not get distracted. And I mean, everything is a distraction. Mm-hmm. You do not get distracted with all sorts of fads and wording and labels and terminologies. And I mean, even the term awakening and God and spiritual and manifesting, that's not the real word for manifesting and creating. That's a man-made word. We made that up. Mm-hmm. Manifesting. We made it up. Are there all the universal laws that I've been teaching for over a decade? Yeah, law of vibration, law of attraction. Sure, there are. But, to me, it's almost a bitter taste in my mouth now, because everybody talks about it and nobody knows what it is.
Right.
And few people know how to use it. And so when people come with questions, they're not even asking the right questions that are going to help them. So usually when I start coaching with someone, like Greg here, he says, I'm trying to trust and develop my intuition. Okay, so you don't have to work with me. But when I see questions like that, here's what I see the majority of people doing. Maybe not you. Obviously, you can hear I'm very passionate about this stuff. I want to see people, if they're really wanting to develop their intuition, if they're really wanting to awaken, and this is not a target to you, Greg. I'm just using you as an example because of your comment, and I love your comment. But I can be kind of hard about this sometimes because it doesn't get people's attention if I'm like all sweetsy about it. No, you can this and that. The bottom line is I don't see people backing up what they say they want. It doesn't matter if it's a free workshop that I have. It doesn't matter if I had a low-cost group that people could come in and pick my brain for 1 to 2 hours a week for a very low cost. And they came in and they gabbed. And then they were like, this isn't for me. Okay, do you want the structure? Do you want the lesson? Do you want to learn? And it's not that we can teach you guys what you need to do, but we can show you the framework to get conscious, right? There is a structure and a framework to developing your intuition. There are some things that just are staples that must happen. Number one, you must be able to be aware of your thoughts, Greg. Very conscious of your thoughts so you can differentiate between your consciousness, your eternal consciousness, and your cognitive thinking. You must be able to tell the difference between feelings and emotion. You must be able to spend time in nature and away from social media, away from things that brainwash, away from influencers. Okay? And you're trying to develop an idea that's never been presented, and most people think it's crazy. Okay, so don't share the idea. Save the energy and put the energy into the idea, and don't allow other people and how you're affected by other people's opinions of what you're doing to take that energy away. This is how all the greatest inventors in the world came up with their ideas. But I'm just saying this, guys, because like Chris and I, we're creating online programs. I have coaching and online coaching programs. And what I find is everybody gets on for the free stuff, which is fine. But nobody, and not nobody, I have amazing clients. The majority of people, I see them week after week after week after week, and they ask little questions and they want results, but they don't really want results. Because if they really wanted results, maybe some of you do, but my point is that you really have to put your choices and your action. Consistency and repetition is what made your life what it is now. It's what created you as who you are now. So if there is something you are desiring or something that you want, there are major shifts that need to be made in your mindset, in your level of consciousness, in your frequency, in your habits, in the people you surround yourself with, in your choices of thoughts, feelings, actions, all of it. And that is not something that happens overnight, which is the part where I do believe in coaching, because a good coach will hold the space for you and will guide you on your journey. And when you leave this live today and you go back out into the world with all those people that think you're crazy, what happens? Your energy, your focus, your thoughts, your emotions get sucked back in, if nothing else, to focusing on the fact of how they just reacted to you. And so it is very important to have a like-minded group of people and or a mentor. It does not have to be me. I'm not trying to sell us. This is something that drives me crazy. And you can get on here and share all these things. It's totally fine. But I'm very blatant about this. And I say it in a very abrupt and serious and authoritative way, because I've done this a long time. And most importantly, here's why. I know how much time, how much work, how much dedication it took me to make the transformations and the awakenings that I had. And I had teachers along the way, but pretty much I did it on my own, which really I don't recommend. Most people need that support. I am the most, I'm not trying to make myself out to be better than anybody else. I'm just saying I'm so tenacious. I'm borderline obsessed. I was obsessed with understanding why I did what I did, how I made my choices, why I made the choices I was. Then I found out about mindset and reprogramming. When I say I was obsessed about it, I mean I ate it, I slept it, I shit it out. That's all I did for over a decade. If I was at work, I cleaned houses for 10 years. I would put on my little reprogramming tapes. I would listen to Eckhart Tolle. I read Eckhart Tolle for 25 years now, nonstop. Once in a while, I'd go to a movie or something with a friend, but for the most part, I would meditate by going out and picking up dog shit in my yard. Why? Because it got me in the now. That is how obsessed I was. And if you're not that obsessed, that focused, you're going to get distracted. And you know what? I still got distracted. It took me over 15 years of reading Eckhart Tolle's book, The Power of Now, before I slipped into the now. And I'd been a transcendental meditator since I was 4 years old. Why? Because I remembered who I was. And I wanted to remember and experience in human form what it was like to be awake and conscious and not controlled by my mind. That was my goal. That and walking through a wall, which I haven't done yet. And I'll never forget that moment. I read that line for the 10,000th time, whatever line it was in his book, and I got it. Just like you hear Jim Carrey saying, and I got it. And I closed the book, and I spent a month with my mouth open, and I realized that every damn thing I thought was wrong, that I'd been stressed and worried about, was perfect. There was nothing wrong with me. There was nothing wrong with my life. There was nothing wrong with the world. It was perfection, and I wouldn't have changed a thing. Most people in a lifetime don't get that moment. So if you want that moment, you have to do the opposite of the things you're doing. Stop trying to awaken. Stop trying to develop your intuition. Focus on being conscious, remembering who you are, and becoming aware of your thoughts. If you really want to take that another step further, please find an authentic coach that can work with you. Okay, we had the prayer sphere on Sunday. We offered 50% off of our online course where people could learn to get, present and to how to release the past and create space and how to move forward and authentically manifest in the future. And we haven't had anybody sign up yet. So we still have the full price course if anybody wants it. It's a 12-week course. Maybe you don't want to work with us. But please, 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 if your heart is really in this, find somebody that will hold the space for you. Get the power of now. That will take you to your intuition, Greg. Okay? Sorry, that was my rant, but I was inspired. And I think sometimes we need to hear things that are outside the box of us. I know I did. I know how hard of a client I was for myself. So anyway, it's been an hour and 2 minutes.
Yep.
Anything on that, Chris? Any words of wisdom to close us up with?
I mean, yeah, exactly that. I mean, to use, this opportunity, whatever resonated with you as a sign that, for you to feel empowered means you have to step into your power. That's doesn't need to be forceful, but you have to be aware of your whole self, the cause and the effect. And when we do that, we, for the lack of better terms, awaken to our higher reality and what we're actually here to be and do as human beings. So thank you for all your passion and all your insight today, Larkin. Thanks to everybody that joined in and shared with us and helped direct the show. And so grateful for all those who tuned in live and will join us on the replay, because we couldn't do this without you. Again, check out our program, the 3Gs, and how it can help you find what you are seeking for yourself, and not because we're selling it to you and thinking creating a loss and doing marketing and manipulation techniques. It is what it is, and you'll get out of it what you put into it. So
I want to mention, Greg, you didn't upset me. I'm being that passionate on purpose.
Yeah.
Because if I'm not, you're not going to remember it. If I don't change my tone and I'm just nicey sweetsy, you guys aren't going to remember it. And what I'm hoping to do is kick you all somewhat in the butt, those of you that are ready, and be like, oh shit, I do need to do something else.
Sure.
It's not what we think it is, right? And the other thing is I have no problem with selling and marketing our program.
Right.
No problem with that at all. And the reason is because it's an energy exchange. Right. And everybody wants something and wants to know what's available to them. So if we don't share with you what we have, which I'm not ashamed and embarrassed to do, you're not going to know that you have that opportunity. It's just that my passion in encouraging you guys to do something else is make sure you take something to the next level. Don't let decades go by and just sit where you are and keep talking about it. Make sure you take the next step in your series of choices, whatever that is for you. And we'll see you next Tuesday, hopefully at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. All right. Thanks, Larkin. See you guys next week.
Bye. Bye.